Advanced manufacturing is before the 90s already. And it's not only 3D printing, you have laser cutting CNC factories already from the end of the 80s, so fashion industry always adapt in terms of industrial tools to make shapes possible. The 90s we started, but the fashion industry as we started was 2013, the first 3D printed dress.
Today, I would say fashion has been using 3D printing for like a decade, around 2010 approximately. We had Iris Van Herpen, who has been 3D printing dresses, and also a lot of young, more independent and not as renowned as her have also been using this technology.
In our case, for our particular project, we've been using it from the very beginning because it was a mandatory need that we had. Our project was to personalize frames and deliver them in a reasonable time. So we needed a very flexible way of producing them. In this way, 3D printing was the most optimum technique that was available right from the beginning.
Well, it depends what you mean for 3D printing. I started to work with additive technique for manufacturing in 2016 in a research project that we conducted in between London and Istanbul, in which we were looking at the self-organizing property of concrete and how to create complex geometry.
For us, additive manufacturing means a lot of different things. For us, additive manufacturing means collaborative robotics, means design to manufacturing, means also material engineering. So those are the three different approaches that we use when we have to talk or when we have to use 3D printing. It means that we use 3D printing to develop custom robots. We use 3D printing to generate sections or small units of houses. So we have to design always by understanding the fabrication process, the construction process behind our drawings.
In terms of fashion, a lot of people are using the 3D application in terms because you can't use by hands. Craftsmanship where you can make shapes not by your hands. So the advance of the applications we have in 3D printing is having material and shapes what is not made by knots, not by embroidery, not by craftsmanship. And the beauty of that application that we can develop shapes that is not possible by this tool of hands. That is the best application for USTRY. For the rest, we have to still see.
The way we conceive this project is that we have to be able to have complete freedom of the designer, of the design and of the algorithms, so that we can adapt the frame to the user's face. So this is the main application for us. So it gives us enough freedom to adapt any part of the frame to the face, to the user's face.
You can make structures, shapes without support. The beauty of 3D printing is that you can use different materials without seams, without hard and soft materials combined in the same shape, without having the needs of seams. So that is a part of things. Especially also in terms of repetition and synchronity. It means that you have kind of shapes you can repeat in terms of way, what can be very, very seamless. So the advance of 3D printing in terms of in fashion now with printing on fabric, hard and soft materials combined, I think that could be very in person around the body.
Fashion has a huge pollution problem and also workers' rights problems. So I think that using these technologies to tackle these real issues is a good way to change the world, because fashion has a huge impact on societies, and I think that if the fashion industry can implement those changes, and it could give a good example to other industries and help change the world.
We scan the user face actually, and then based on that we are able to adapt a frame to that face, and we have to produce it. And we have to produce it not in 3 months, not in 2 months, we have to produce it in a few days. So that is what we actually need from 3D printing.
Additive manufacturing allows us to control material So allow us to predict complexity, allow us to personalize, customize solution, allow us also to generate and build alternative products that are not existing.
Now, we started with SL printing because we want to have hard shapes, thin lines. You also have this, the filament is not that way because filament doesn't have the shape to make craft, a complicated shape. So it is a combination of nanotechnology when you have very nice tiny things like printing hair or printing soft liquid with hard materials. I think the now question is more, how can we use different combine of techniques, 3D printing with other kind of industrial machines combined to make that more interesting for fashion. Otherwise you have the same shape, same materials the whole time, and that's not interesting in fashion, pushing the boundaries.
Well, our project started at least 8 years ago, and at that moment only one technique was really suitable for that, which was SLS, synthetic lasering. That was because the parts were already useful as end parts, so it was not prototyping. All the other materials that were produced with 3D printing were too brittle. And now we have evolved a little bit, and also multi-shed fusion has been introduced in our business model, and it works really well.
I think the whole thing is now for the last 30 years, when you see starting in the 90s and now, is that the designers are pushing the industry in coloring, multi-convex printers, hard and soft material, printing material we already know of the metal or the fabric. So I think beside the medical industry, beside the design industry, we now merging more together. It's not separated. So I think in terms of that challenging boundary boxes, sizes, not only small things. So in the fashion industry, you want to have bigger volumes to have a better way of designing and draping. I think that is still a challenge.
For example, there is this research about growing mushrooms to make an alternative leather, there is several startups around the world working on spider silk. And so what's really interesting with spider silk is that it has a lot of very interesting properties, and it is also biodegradable. So I think it's a great thing for the future of fashion.
The main technique I'm working on is the idea to work with multiple type of substratum or 3D printing. So 3D printing with material that are more artificial in relationship to material that can be biological, like biogel with inoculated microalgae that can grow after it's been 3D printed. In this sense, I don't conceive 3D printing, as I mentioned before, as a construction system only, but I imagine a machine that could be eventually part of the landscape and keep taking care of the landscape, gardening the landscape as a form of cyber gardening in time, by reading through sensor and then printing and modifying what they've been reading.
I hope, to be very honest, that especially when we start creating local production, instead that we don't have to do logistics, that we design something, go far to another country, produce that, get a bag of cheap labor. I hope that we can make sure, the same what the lace industry would have small machines, knitting wear machines, that 3D printing will replace this kind of way, how we can have locally entrepreneurship here in Europe and America and Asia to produce local production with the necessary, let me say, good material, because not only the machine, but also the material is very important. Sustainability and what kind of materials is degradable with all the plastic we now print out in the environment. So I hope that will be in 10 years solved.
In 10 years, that's a good question, and I'm not Madame Soleil, so I don't see the future, but what I can say is that a lot of people believe that in the future we'll be able to print our own clothes and to only buy patterns from the brands, which I think is cool. But I think that there is a huge education need before we reached that point because now it's the maker community and all the professionals that are using 3D printers and not the wider public.
Well, my opinion is that 3D printing is here to stay. So it's not just fashionable, it's not something that will just go by or pass by in a few years. Materials are increasing more and more. The feature and characteristics of materials are improving a lot. And so in a few years, you'll have a lot more options that you can use and you can play with to make even more advanced material, more advanced designs.
For me, the 3D printer of the future is the one that could be printing air, could be printing fire, could be printing water. So all these materials that still are out of our hands, still we cannot manipulate, and that could possibly end up being, again, a design matter.
For me, in 10 years, 3D printing will have two elements that will become interesting. One is the idea that the machine will not be static anymore. We will not talk about 3D printing as a single big machine that print a house and then go, but we will talk about millions of machines distributed in the landscape. They will become the equivalent of birds or bacteria or human system, and will read and interact with other systems. So they will be able to both print hard material, as it can be concrete or plastic, but also biological material that change in time.